Okay, folks, while y'all were doom scrolling social, I was doing the equivalent with the raw CME futures contract data. No, I was just scrolling through because I was working on some scripts. But what caught my eye is I didn't know there was a foreign stock index in here, which is, of course, the yen denominated Nikkei. And so you see the data here. Of course, the issue is with this old school formatting, at a glance, it's super hard to, like, I don't want to look at this, which is, of course, why in applications like TradingView here on my weekly chart, which is where I start my analysis, in these two panes down here, you've got COT, futures contract data, commitment of traders data, which comes from the CFTC. And so, obviously, you've got your commercial and large speculator net positions plotted here. Down here, this is open interest, and you can probably guess these little bars are volume. And so this is significant because, and by the way, the code is NIY, the CME. This is significant because this means I'll be able to engage the yen denominated Nikkei on a certain decentralized exchange that I already use almost every day. So I'm pretty excited about that. I just discovered basically that there's a new asset that I can trade. So hopefully coming up here in the third quarter, if there's a week where this looks like one of the better options, I'm going to for sure engage this, and hopefully I can share a trade setup or maybe even a trade recap. So, but what I really wanted to touch on is with apps like TradingView, commitment of traders indicators, they're not that common, and if you find one, it's going to be pretty basic. And so that's important to me because COT data is kind of like a prerequisite for my analysis, and of course, with my personal trading model, it's a prerequisite to engage any asset. So if you do find an indicator, or if you code one of your own in a programming language like PineScript here, chances are you're going to have to do some jimmy rigging. This is TradingView's one of their legacy indicators, which makes use of library COT. So whether you use someone else's or you code your own, you're going to need this. And I had to do a little jimmy rigging, like you can see here. To get high grade copper, I used this. I was looking at lumber, and then I just added NIY, the yen denominated Nikkei, to make sure I can run the script with those assets in mind. So if you're not familiar with PineScript, it's not the most well documented. The documentation that is out there, it's not the easiest to read. And so even if you do something like, you search online or you run the code through AI, it tends to be error prone. So you're basically kind of on your own with a PineScript as far as commitment of traders indicators go. So that being said, and consider, let's say you're also starting out and you don't have the budget for bells and whistles on TradingView. Like I dropped in this indicator up here on my weekly chart, which conveniently divides the year up into quarters. So you can, it's easy to visualize the quarters at a glance, and I got all these other indicators, some of which I made on my own. Say you're not a PineScript coder, you don't have all the bells and whistles in TradingView. Well, there's another resource which a lot of you young folks may not know of, which of course is Barchart.com. So if you glance at this weekly chart and these two panes down here, it's the same information. Weekly price chart and a couple of indicators based on the COT data. So it's exactly the same. So you could use this to do your analysis or maybe even engage the markets. And with Barchart, you know, there is also a lot of customization available as far as the appearance goes. And I mean, it's totally free for the entry level. And with that, there's a ton of information and a ton of different charts and tools and stuff. And also, I think the key benefit of Barchart is these indicators, you just add them on and they work out of the box. You don't need to mess with something like PineScript. And it's identical to the data I showed you, and of course matches up with the data from here. So shout out to Barchart, which has been around since the early 90s, which means it's been around since a lot of you munchkins were even conceived, and it's almost as old as me. So, shout out to Barchart, and I hope that helps some of y'all. I'll see y'all on Q3.